Hi, and welcome to our very first Film and Paper Club movie discussion. This week we're going to be talking about the 2014 film Gone Girl. I'm your director, Michelle Hickey, and at Film and Paper Club, we are a group of creatives who love movies, television, books, snacks, and chatting about all of it. So if you are one of those people who also love all of those things, please consider subscribing to our channel and giving this video a thumbs up. Before we get started, I want to give a spoiler warning. If you have not seen the 2014 film Gone Girl, I'm going to be spoiling it. Gone Girl, as you probably know, because if you're still here, it means that you have already seen this movie. It was created in 2014 based off of the book by the same name. The screenplay was written by Gillian or Gillian, however you say it, Flynn, who also wrote the book. And it is the story of a wife who disappears on the morning of her 5th wedding anniversary, which leads to an investigation where her husband is the prime suspect. I read this book before I saw the movie. I absolutely loved it. In the year that I read it, I kept saying, okay, this is my favorite book of the year. The twist that happened at that midway point in the book really got me. I don't know if I would feel the same way today, because I think the more we experience these twists and we see it done over and over again in books and in movies, it doesn't quite have the same effect. But at the time when I read it, my mind was blown. So as you can imagine, I was anxious to see this movie. I did see it in the movie theater. I've seen it a couple times prior to this rewatch, but discovered some new things that I had not yet picked up on during this time around. So let me know. Have you read the book? Have you seen the movie? Hopefully your answer is yes. And if so, in which order and which did you like better? So there is a lot happening in this movie. There's a missing person, there's a potential murder, there's an investigation, a lot of people who aren't telling the truth. But the thing that really stuck out to me in this rewatch was this very clear theme of narratives. We find out pretty close to the beginning of this story that our main characters, Amy's parents, have written a series of children's books called The Amazing Amy Stories, which are basically about her, except a very idealized version of her. Someone who she's never going to live up to.
Your wife is Amazing Amy?
We see her tell her husband or husband-to-be in this scene that no matter what she has done in her life, whether it's playing volleyball or trying out for the volleyball team, all the way up into actually getting engaged, Amazing Amy is always a step further than her. Amazing Amy is always outdoing her.
When I was 10, I quit cello. In the next book, Amazing Amy became a prodigy.
And she is coming into this story or, growing up in this world where she feels like she's never going to be enough and that she does not have control of her story. And this becomes really important to all of the decisions that she makes in this story of Gone Girl.
Your parents literally plagiarized your childhood.
No, they improved upon it and then peddled it to the masses.
This kind of starts when she begins her relationship with Nick, but we see her say over and over again, we're not going to be one of these couples. We're going to be different. We're going to be the ones who beat the odds. And to me, this is her taking control of this narrative. This is going to be the one thing that she's going to do better than the Amazing Amy.
Everyone told us and told us and told us marriage is hard work. Well, it's not true. Not for me and Nick.
And I love how Gillian or Gillian Flynn uses Amy's diary as a narrative for us as the viewer, because we then get to see Amy for the first time. Instead of her parents, she gets to write her own story. And we learn through her diary entries that a lot of the stuff that she says in the beginning is true. She says,
You need a diary. Minimum 300 entries on the Nick and Amy story. Start with the fairy tale early days. Those are true, and they're crucial. You want Nick and Amy to be likable. After that, you invent.
Amy also gets to tell a story through a second channel, and that is through the clues that she leaves Nick for their anniversary scavenger hunt. Now, this is her way of speaking to the investigation, of speaking to the police, but for us as an audience, this is the way that we are let on to the truth about who Nick really is. Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? And ultimately, learning all of his secrets. There are also the narratives set forth by the media in this story, which we know feels very true to real life. Depending on what channel you tune into, you're going to get a different perspective and story based on the same set of facts. And lastly, this is subtle, but we also see the narrative of the two detectives. And in this one specific scene, we see that they can't help but to bring their biases to this investigation, and they can't help but to look at this investigation through the lens of their own experiences.
So, how was your marriage, Nick? Because right now all we got's Noelle.
She says not good.
Hey, Gil, what do you and your wife argue about? What pisses you off?
Oh, money, lack thereof.
Me and my ex, the same. I mention that because we've got to look at your finances, Nick. $117,000 in credit card debt.
What?
Let's talk about how we can look at this theme of narratives and see how we can apply it to our creative work. Keep in mind, anytime that you're creating something, we are telling a story. And you know that you're telling that story from the perspective of your truth. But whether you are, creating something that's fabricated or not, you have what you want the audience to experience. But I think it's really important for us to remember that everyone is coming to view and experience your work or your project from a different perspective. And therefore, they're always going to be looking at it through a lens that is totally unique to them. So it doesn't matter what we create or how hard we try to communicate what we want our core message to be. It's going to be experienced in millions of different ways. I also think this is cool because it challenges us to look at things in a different way. As someone who just finished writing her first book, I absolutely loved this scene between Nick and his lawyer, Tanner Bolt, as Tanner is coaching him literally by throwing things at him to make sure that Nick is crafting his words very carefully and that he's telling his story from a point of view that it's going to make the audience sympathize with him.
Let's try it again. Mr. Dunn, from what I understand, you and your wife had some bumps.
Yeah, we had some tough years. I lost my job.
You both did.
And the reason that I love this as a writer is because I felt like it was kind of a writing exercise in that, you may write a sentence, and I was imagining, sitting at my laptop and writing a sentence and having someone like toss something at me and be like, no, say that same thing, but say it in a different way.
For a while, things had been building up.
Built up implies that an explosion is coming. No.
At a certain point, we got on the wrong track. I had a moment of weakness.
Your moment was over 15 months.
I disrespected my wife. I disrespected my marriage. And I'll always regret it.
That works.
Don't be afraid to play up the doofus husband thing, Nick.
Hopefully in our case, it's not that we're trying to cover up the truth, but maybe that there is a more interesting or a more compelling way to tell a story. So if you're someone who is writing, keep this scene in mind next time you go to write something. See if after you write your first sentence, imagine someone tossing something at you and saying, rewrite that again. How can you make this better? How can you make the audience understand you better by choosing a different set of words or rearranging your words into a different combination? And you don't always need to do this type of exercise to try to to make a point or to convince someone of something. It may just be because a lot of times I'm totally guilty of this, but when we create anything, so for me, my background is in graphic design. So if I'm going to design something, it's often that first solution that you marry. You think, you fall in love with it. You think this is the greatest thing that I've ever made. There can't possibly be another way that I can do this that will be better. But anyone who has created second and third and fourth and so on drafts know that oftentimes better solutions will come along when we stretch ourselves and try again and try again. So one of the things you can do if you are a visual artist is to literally take what you've created and do the trick where you look at your work really closely, zoom in on it, and then maybe print it off, hang it up on a wall, and step back and look at it from a distance. You also might want to do something like turn it upside down, or this is just, speaks to how crazy our brains work. Step away from it. Shut your computer, walk away, or if you're doing something in real life, close the door to your studio and come back to it the next day and look at it through that fresh perspective, through a different set of eyes. And challenge yourself to rethink what you're doing and push yourself to do that second or third draft. One other exercise you might want to try is to take a piece of art, something that you've created that's already done, and then consider what you may do differently if you were creating that same piece for someone specifically. Like if you were creating a piece that was commissioned by a client. And one of the tricks that might help you in this exercise is to imagine a character. I mean, it can be a character from Gone Girl. It doesn't have to be, but it helps if they have very specific preferences. So look at that piece that you created and think, what choices would I have made differently if I was doing this for this other person? And, depending on what the project is, I mean, obviously not something like writing a book, like you're going to write a whole new book, but maybe just, a chapter if you're a writer, or if you are, a designer or a painter, just doing an initial quick sketch or a mock-up or a mood board to just kind of push your creative boundaries and seeing if you were doing that same project for someone else, if it would have ended up being something better. It could be something worse. It could just be the same, but different. But I think it would be an interesting exercise just to put a new narrative on what you're doing and see how it comes out. So if you recently rewatched Gone Girl and you realize how much you love this movie, because it is awesome. I hope you had the same reaction that I did after recently rewatching it. And you want more content, please head over to our Film and Paper Club membership, where we have lots of extra goodies related to this film and every other film that we cover, including food and drink pairings, my favorite, creative prompts, and a film guide that includes discussion questions and some behind the scene tidbits. I think that these are really cool because it gives you the opportunity to sit down at home with your loved ones on your own schedule, but to make your movie night or movie afternoon or movie morning, no judgments, a little bit more special and unique. And we're setting you up with all the things that you need to make it really special. In addition to that, inside of our Film and Paper Club community, the best part is that you get to chat with other like-minded, creative people who also love films, television, and books. Thanks so much for being part of our virtual discussion. Before you go, if you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and also subscribe so that you don't miss any more of our movie discussions. Our theme for this month of October is mystery and suspense, and I'm so excited for next week when we'll be talking about the talented Mr. Ripley. I'll see you guys next time.
And scene.